for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right, welcome, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today's Wednesday, September 20th, 2023. It's going to be a great show tonight. Kathleen Ball is with us. Now, tonight, it's going to be the Knights Templar in Brazil. Brazil with an S. Have you seen the commercials that Brazil is running on United States television? It's so I decided to do that. The commercials are it's Brazil with an S, not a Z, and I just thought, I'm gonna see who catches that, and if anybody is seeing the same things that I am. Now Kathleen uses a Z. And and you get to see it, right? And it's right there on her website and the title of the show. And there you go. Now you know why. All right. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody is paying attention. She's got a documentary out. She's got a book out. We will tonight challenge some traditional narratives, and it's always great to have an open mind. I am here to learn something along with all of you. She's a researcher. She's a traveler. She's a doctor too as well. It is Dr. Kathleen Ball, and she is an explorer of ancient sites. She's been all around the world. Earlier, we were talking about Egypt and Akhenaten right before the show. Now, she discovered a Templar Cave in Brazil while exploring the country. We will get into all of that and the documentary and the book. She is committed to revealing the true agenda of the mysterious order of the Knights Templar, and her website is the Templars in Brazil with a Z, and the links for it are below. And I would like to welcome, very excited about this, for the first time to Fade to Black, Dr. Kathleen Ball. Kathleen, good evening, young lady. How you doing?
Hey, Jimmy, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm fantastic. And before we get started, you get the first-time guest disclaimer. So let's get that out of the way, which is, Kathleen, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. There you go. But you have to accept.
Right.
Did you click? did you accept? Do you ever do that? I ask guests this all the time. When you have those terms, right, and accept and agree, and it's like, it's 10,000. Do you ever read those, or do you just click and move on?
Well, most of them I click and move on.
I have no idea. I have no idea. We can come and take your house. It can say anything.
Right.
And,
I know. It's like, yeah.
So, okay, I think I just interrupted you. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say we'd spend half our life reading all those things.
I did a fade.
Yeah, we would be doing nothing but reading that stuff. The way life is today in this world. So.
I did a fader fact about those terms. I think it was last year or the year before, that if we read every agreement that we clicked on, it would take 1 year to read through. And I thought about it, that makes a lot of sense. I think that is a fact. I really do. Some of them are really long. So
Well,
But
I would have thought it would have taken more like 10 years. So I'm surprised to hear it was only one.
at our age, 1 year is precious. One day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stage of the game, I'm not giving up a year for that. I have a whole
Not
lot more important and exciting things to do with my life, than spend time reading that stuff. Not my favorite.
now. The Knights Templar. I have had the opportunity to interview hundreds of researchers into the Knights Templar. I am as fascinated about the Knights Templar as anybody else. It's an amazing subject and such a colorful history. So much there and so much mystery behind it as well. I just taped some episodes of my TV show this weekend, and once again, another guest discussing the Knights Templar. And we just had a guest walk through. Is everything okay? Okay.
Yeah. My husband is just walking through here. Anyway,
It looks like he just took an animal with him. So
well, we have cats. We have Bengal cats, and we have 4 Bengals. I don't know if you're familiar with that particular breed, but anyway, so he takes care of them at certain times, and this happens to be one of the times.
one of those times. Now the interviews that I have done, I'm on a quest for knowledge, right? And it seems that the more that I learn, the more questions that I have about the Knights Templar. And when your documentary came out, and everybody can go to Templars in Brazil and check out the documentary and the book and stuff, but I firmly believe today that the Knights Templar were completely global.
Absolutely.
And the question of them being in Brazil or anywhere, I don't think it should come as a surprise to anybody, including yourself, right?
It really shouldn't, Jimmy. We have to consider that during the years of the Inquisition, after the Knights of Christ were created in Portugal to basically save what was left of the order in Portugal, people literally burned everything they had that was associated with the Templars. If they were of Templar families, they were frightened. They were murdered. They were hunted down and murdered. And I found paper documents and papers in the Rosicrucian Library when I was doing some research that they literally went through Europe and they hunted down Templar descendants and murdered them. So this was going on all the way into the 15th, 16th century, up into the 17th century. So people were terrified to be caught with anything that had anything to do with Templars. So it's not surprising that there's very little left for us to dig through and try to piece together, an accurate historical record. I've been lucky enough that I have researchers and sources that have offered me family records. And so I have some background information on the Templars that a lot of people don't have access to. And I have reason to believe that the Templars left from Portugal, a small town called Peniche, which was actually an island at that time, to go into Portugal. There was actually a naval base there that was sanctioned by the king at the time in the 1300s. That was created for what? I mean, why would you do that? Why? What was the purpose? And when I found out that my cave and several of the other caves in the area that the Templars dug out were gold mines, I began to piece it together. It's like, okay, well, that would make sense why the king would be supporting such voyages into the New World and why they would keep it quiet. When they first discovered Brazil, when they first discovered South America, they called it Vera Cruz, which meant the true cross. And they convinced as many people as they could back in Europe that it was an island, not an entire continent. And this was because they didn't want people following. They didn't want people going over there, because they were pulling silver out of Peru and gold out of Brazil. So, you know, I'm piecing together a lot more background. In fact, my next trip to Portugal, I will be. A friend of mine is actually translating some family records, some more family records for me, that is going to prove this without a doubt. So, and also, the symbols that I found in the cave, which is interesting because I couldn't get into the cave. The first time when I discovered the cave, it was full of bats and spiders. And so, when I went in there, it was dark, and I've got my hiking boots on and stuff. But when I put my flashlight down on the ground, I saw, I had spiders. There were thousands of them. They were all over. Anyway, they were crawling all over my legs and my boots and everything. So, of course, I hightailed it out of there. But when I did get to go back in and actually investigate the symbols in the cave, they were the same, very almost exactly the same as what I found in Dome, France, that were most definitely carved by the Knights Templar while they were awaiting their deaths, from 1307 to 1314. So I was convinced at that point that that Templars definitely were in there. They definitely hand carved. This cave is hand carved. It's not machine dug. It's hand carved. Very similar to other Templar caves that we've discovered, that other people have discovered in Europe. So,
well, let's back up, because we're going to focus on the cave throughout the show tonight.
okay.
For you personally, what ignited your journey, your quest? I just said it right. Your quest of the Knights Templar, and I'm going to be straight. I think a lot of this did this. It was like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right? You go and you see that movie, and you get this. It's funny, it's great, but it's such a part of our culture and our childhood, and it's like an introduction into this. And I go back and I watch the movie today, and I do it all the time. It's actually accurate. Right? There are things about it where you just back up and go, well, this is part of the historical record. Well, if you're from my generation, you were exposed to that film at a young age, 10 years old, right? 11 years old, 12 years old. And then you just go, who were the Knights Templar? And I'm not saying that for you was it Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but I'm saying that there are hundreds of millions of people on this planet that have been exposed to the Knights Templar through Hollywood and everything else. And for you, what ignited it?
Well, what ignited it for me, I was really fascinated with Leonardo da Vinci, and when as a teenager, and of course as an art, I taught myself how to draw and paint with his, copying his drawings and paintings. And when I found out when the Da Vinci Code came out, and there was some association or some indication that Da Vinci himself was associated with some secret societies, which I firmly believe. Anyway, that ignited this interest in the Templars. And when I went to France, it was probably my third or fourth visit to France. My husband and I were over there on our honeymoon, and we went into Dome, France, and we were coming out of this grotto, and the curator for the museum gave me the keys to the dungeon and said, "Here, you want to go explore the dungeon?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." Anyway, he said, "Well, bring the keys back when you're done." He was very nonchalant about the whole thing, and I photographed everything in there. So that really ignited my my interest in the Templars at that point. And also, he said to me, which was interesting, he said, "Do you know what they were protecting?" And I said, "Well, I have some idea. They were protecting treasure." He said, "But do you know what the real treasure is?" And I said, "Well, what's your take on it?" And he said, they were protecting the bloodline of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And I just went, wow. Well, I've heard a lot about that. I'm on the fence about that myself, but at the time I was. And anyway, so I don't feel like it was any accident. I think that everybody's life can be a Grail quest, personally. Um, you can be a banker, and one day you just question everything that's going on in your life, and you walk outside, and for some reason, some synchronistic event happens that jump starts and completely transforms your life. And the next thing you know, you're on your own Grail quest. I mean, I think this can happen to anybody. And I think anybody who has that deep desire for more or for answers or truth or ancient sites or whatever it is, they can go out there and do that, whether it's on vacation time or however they have to make it work. For me, it was a near-death experience in 1990 that jump-started and completely transformed my life. I mean, absolutely transformed my life. And I started studying the esoteric belief systems, myth, all myth, legends, just you name it. I studied quantum physics. I was studying biology. I was just studying everything, getting the background of our history and our sciences and whatnot on this planet. And of course, I was an artist, so I was also. This was all these studies and my research was feeding my art. So I was doing things like the Nephilim and the Daughters of Men, as a series in art. This was back in the early 2000s when nobody knew about the Nephilim. Nobody talked about the Nephilim at that point. And these are the kinds of things I was doing. I was doing Kabbalah. I was studying Kabbalah. I've been a student of Kabbalah all my life, basically, but intensified again after the near-death experience. I took the Tree of Life and made it into a huge, painted it on the floor, and I did a huge installation in San Francisco where people walked into the Tree of Life and actually experienced it themselves. And I veiled off everything but a small entrance, and you came into a chalice where you had to look at yourself in the reflection of the water as you entered into the Tree of Life. So all my esoteric studies and all the research that I was doing was feeding my art. And that's what it did for years. That's what I did. I was a professional artist and art professor up at Columbia in Sonora. And as I continued my study, and I was working on my PhD in metaphysical studies. So, I can't actually tell you when the actual moment that triggered the Templars, specifically research into Templars, because I think it was an accumulation of a lot of moments that happened. And then I found out that, on my grandfather's side in Scotland, I come from Templar roots. So, I'm a descendant of Templar myself. And I think that has something to do with it as well. I think in our DNA, we carry memory in our DNA. And I think that we can access that. I know that I feel a deep connection to certain places in Scotland and in Portugal when I go to Templar sites. So I just don't think it was any accident. I think it was sort of a divine moment when I did discover the cave, which I wasn't looking for. I wasn't looking for a cave. That was the last thing on my mind that day when I discovered that cave. So,
there is there's a side of the Knights Templar, knighthood in general, but with the Knights Templar, that is romantic and romanticized, and I see that, and I understand it. And then when you really look deeply into the Knights Templar, harsh, hardcore, strong, lots of intelligence behind it, the banking and all of that. But those pilgrimages and then and what went down in Jerusalem and in Israel in general, defending the land, battles, and just a very, very, very harsh life that made them a very strong and industrial order. You know what I mean? There was a lot of strength behind them.
There was. And there's a lot of strife on the spiritual path. You know, if you talk to anyone who's been on a spiritual path for any length of time, you're gonna hear that it's not a walk in the park. It involves a lot of challenges. I've overcome extreme challenges in my life since I've been on this path. So, you know, in the Templar era, they were fighting in crusades. They were literally physically battling, but it all hones. It's like it all serves to hone you down, just like a good sword, you know, is tempered. That's what it does to you as a human being. You know, it forces you to become who you truly are, or not, or not.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I was just looking at some of the comments in the chat, and I find it interesting. And so I'm going to ask this question. It just popped up a few times in the chat. Who were they, and what was their purpose? And sometimes you have to get back to the fundamentals, right? And tell the story, because not everybody knows. And you know, they're on their own life's journey coming into the show tonight, and we're probably a little bit ahead of our skis because you and I know a lot about the subject. Let's back up for a second. What was the purpose? What was the origination of the Knights Templar?
Well, the origination, you know, the story, as the story goes, you know, they were created as an order by the Catholic Church. Bernard de Clairvaux, who was a priest, a very prominent priest at that time, to go over there and become a military order of priests themselves. Which had not been done. That they hadn't combined the priesthood with actual fighting and with the military order. That had not been done. So this was a novel idea, and it took. I mean, it just took off. I mean, it really took off. In the early stages of the Templars, there were supposedly only 9 knights. So I have a difficult time buying that story that 9 knights were. You know, an order of 9 knights was created to protect pilgrims going into the Holy Land. I mean, I just find that difficult to swallow that. And also, you know, there's now evidence that has surfaced. Timothy Hogan talks about this, that the Templars were created much earlier, you know, than 1148 or 1048, excuse me, when, you know, the historical record says. They were actually created, they actually formed in Greece and went into Constantinople. So, and I've seen it myself in Greece, visiting Greece. There's Templar crosses all over Athens. It's all over the place. And then also in Istanbul, there's Templar castles, the remains of the ruins of Temple castles over there. And I have every reason to believe that that is true, that they were created much earlier than what the historical record said. But anyway, so the historical record says that they were created in the 1100s. They went over there, they fought the battles, against the Muslims. But what they don't talk about as often is the fact that they actually studied the inner workings of the Templar, actually studied with the Sufis. And they brought back a lot of those teachings. You know, if you read any of Freddie Silva's stuff, he's got some great stuff on that. A Templar Nation is a fabulous book that Freddie wrote that talks about this topic. That, you know, that they brought back a lot of these esoteric beliefs from the Holy Land, and along with what I think one of the main reasons they were over there, especially the inner order. The esoteric, the men that made up the esoteric group, the inner circle of the Templars, were over there underneath the Temple Mount, excavating the Temple Mount and bringing back whatever there was underneath that Temple Mount. And I don't know. Nobody knows what that was. It's never been revealed. But whatever that was, they brought all those things back to Europe. Now in Portugal, which was the only country in all of Europe at the time, the Templars they took in Muslims, they took in the Moors, they took in the Cathars, they took in the Jews. They believed in something other than what the Catholic Church was teaching at the time. The Catholic Church was trying to annihilate all of these people as heretics, and that's not what the Templars were doing in Portugal, which is a very important point, because they were the only nation at that time that could not be infiltrated by the Catholic Church. It took the Catholic Church all the way up until the 1500s to when they finally got a king in Portugal that they could work to infiltrate and bring the Inquisition into Portugal. It took that long. That's 500 years later. So Portugal was really a stronghold. They really managed to keep that element out, and they protected the people in their country, and they were from all walks of life.
Now, I've heard, let's go back to the Temple Mount for a second, and King Solomon. I've heard so many different theories and ideas about not only what was found, but the Templar treasure, and wouldn't we love to have that surface today so we could find this out and put a period instead of a comma at this part of history, right, where we can finally get these questions answered. But you've mentioned Portugal a few times. Mm-hmm. Do you think that whatever they found and as it made its way back to Europe, that it went to Portugal first?
I do. I do. Yeah, I do. I think that France is everything. We've all focused on France as their primary stronghold in Europe, and I think that it was the face of the Templars in France. But I do think that a lot of the inner esoteric, the inner circle, and a lot of like the treasure and things like that were stored in Portugal. And I definitely think that during the time when they were being rounded up by King Philip in 1307, I think that there's a lot of story about them going into La Rochelle in ships and then ending up into Scotland. That is very possible, and I don't discount that. But I do believe that a lot of it, they just went into Portugal. A lot of the Templars that were in France went into Portugal, where they already had a safe haven. It was already established as a Templar nation, not just different areas or different castles, but an entire nation, entire country that was open and supportive of the Templars.
Now let's take this a step further. Scott Walter, Timothy Hogan, and others have talked about pre-Columbus the Knights Templar being transoceanic and crossing the Atlantic quite a bit, and the possibility of them removing whatever they took out of Jerusalem and brought it to the Americas. But if that predated Columbus by some estimates here, it's 200, 300, maybe even 400 years prior to Columbus. And if Portugal is in play, then Brazil is in play, right?
Absolutely. And personally, I have a lot of people, current Templars, that think that I may even, bump into the Templar treasure myself in Brazil. There's a lot of people now, and I'm not going to mention names, but there are some very important people that have made pilgrimages into Brazil because of my discovery of this cave, and that they do believe that I may just accidentally find this treasure. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. It'd be great. I mean, that'd be awesome if I did. But I've told them, I've made it very clear that I would have no interest in the treasure myself, that as far as I'm concerned, it belongs to the Templars, and I would want to see it go back into their hands. Of course, I would want to be able to research the items and, explore them myself, but I wouldn't have any interest in wanting to keep them or anything else. But personally, I think they may have dispersed the treasure into several different places just to safeguard it.
Mhm.
There may be some in North America. There may be some in South America. It wouldn't, it would just make sense to me. If you have a huge, huge, I mean, they had more money than anybody else in Europe. They had jewels. They had everything you can imagine. Um, in addition to whatever that was they discovered in the under the Temple Mount. So it would make sense if you're trying to hide something that you wouldn't hide it all in one place. I mean, that just makes sense to me. So I suspect that when we do uncover this treasure, and I believe it's going to happen in our lifetime, I think that it will happen. I think that it may be in several locations.
Now, what in a linear sense, what year are we talking here? Scott and Tim and others, Timothy Hogan, Scott Walter, and others have put this date somewhere between 1000 and 1300. Yeah, and that these trips were happening during that period. There's some pretty serious documentation to back this up.
Yeah.
So, what year do you think they arrived in Portugal, in Brazil?
I think it was sometime before the 13. I think it was sometime in the late 1290 maybe. But just gauging from some of the symbols that I found in the cave, they match a church, some of the symbols that are on a church in Peniche, Portugal. And that church was built in 1099. So, I mean, that's not definitive proof, obviously, but it is an indication of a time frame when these same symbols were being used. They're being used in Peniche in 1099. They show up in a cave in Brazil. Okay. What possible connection? Why would someone go into Brazil and create symbols that are the same as we have in Peniche? Why would they do that? I would think because they were of the same time frame, that these were the same, maybe even the same people that were creating these mason marks and whatnot and symbols on the church in Peniche. And they're also in Istanbul, by the way. So I think that, I can't put in, a positive date. We can't get any archaeological evidence. The stone can't be tested, carbon, we can't do any carbon testing on that. But just from the symbols and the things that I have found in Portugal, I would say sometime between 1050 and 1314.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. The cave itself. Let's talk about how it was discovered. And the first question is the cave located? You don't have to be specific, but is it located on the coastline or is it inland? How far?
No, this is the interesting thing about it. It's 3.5 hours from Brasilia, and it's probably a good maybe 7 7 hours driving, if you're driving a car, from Rio, from the coast, and where Bahia is. What I believe is that they came from Peniche, Portugal, sailed from Peniche into Bahia, and from Bahia they connected with the Amazonian tribes. And the reason I believe this is because, and then they took them into central Brazil, which is where Alto Paraiso, which is the town that's nearest. Actually, the cave is right in between Moinho and Alto Paraiso, which means high paradise. Anyway, it's right in between these two towns. But the reason I think that the Amazonian tribes brought them into Brazil is because the Amazonian tribes still come into Alto Paraiso and have for hundreds of years. There's 5 tribes that come in every year to do ceremonies. And I had a source in Portugal who told me that the Amazon tribes were the ones that brought the Templars in from the coast, from Bahia, into central Brazil, and also led them into other parts of South America. Now, there's some, I'm hearing, I just got some information that there's some Templar artifacts in Peru, in a small museum in Peru. So my next trip over there, I'm going to be investigating those as well. But I think that they were back and forth, that they were sailing back and forth from Portugal into Brazil, possibly into Peru, for hundreds of years before Columbus and all the historical record, what the historical record states.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Peru next month. And you can email me the name of the museum, and
I will. I will.
And I'll see if I can follow up on that. That's real interesting. I'll be there for quite a while. I'll be there for almost 3 weeks.
Right.
But okay, so that far, Brazil is huge, right? So to get that far into central Brazil, it says a lot, and that's pretty amazing to me. How did you manage to get into central Brazil and discover this cave?
Well, I had a liver disease. I had a very, when I was first diagnosed, it was terminal. They told me it was terminal. I was going to die from it, which I didn't believe. But anyway, so
no, you're still here.
I'm still here. This is a whole story. I had a liver transplant in 2015, right after I found the cave. I came home from the cave. 9 days later, my house burnt to the ground, along with everything else that I owned, and 90,000 acres in the Butte Fire in Northern California. 5.5 or 6 weeks after that, I had a liver transplant. But anyway, so let's backtrack. I was in Brazil in 2015 is when I discovered the cave, and by the way, my house burned down on September 11th. But anyway, so I'm in Brazil, and my girlfriend had invited me over there because she had been volunteering with John of God over in Abadiânia, Brazil. And so she thought that maybe he could do something for me and I could avoid having a liver transplant, which I was really wanting to do because I was concerned about the anti-rejection meds. Anyway, so I joined up with her in Brasilia, and we contacted some people in Abadiânia, and John of God wasn't going to be there for a few days for some reason. So she said, well, there's this wonderful place I've wanted to explore for a long time. It's up in the Chapada. Let's drive up there for a couple of days. And I said, sure, let's do it. So we did. Anyway, long story short, we went down into one of these waterfalls that's in this Chapada National Reserve. It's a beautiful area. It's like there's palm trees and coconuts and guava. And I mean, it's like a paradise. It really is a paradise. Anyway, and it's surrounded by all these beautiful ancient waterfalls and mountains, and it's just exquisite area. So we're hiking, we go to the waterfall, we come back up. The guy that owns the camping Pousada, which is the camping hotel in that area, he says, hey, would you girls like to see this crystal vein next door on the adjacent property? And there's crystals all over the ground. You can pick them up, collect crystals and blah, blah, blah. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. So we went over there. We got hooked up with the guide, and the guide is taking us down. We see this amazing crystal solid. It's about a meter high. It's about a meter wide, and it goes about 2 kilometers through this property. And it's just fabulous. And there's crystals laying, millions of them. They're all over the place. Beautiful crystals, huge crystals. And it was just really exciting. So it's hot. And he says, well, let's just take a break, drink our water, have a snack. There's a little cave right down here, another 1.5 kilometers or so, and just relax and rest before we head back up. Because we're on a hillside. This is a hillside. It's going straight down. And we had hiked 4 or 5 kilometers straight down into the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's nothing in this area. So we get into this, we get down close to the cave, and he lifts up the bushes. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There's a Templar cross above the cave. And I said to him,
What? Wait. Yeah, right. It's like, right
what?
there.
Yeah, what is this cross? What is a Templar cross doing out here in the middle of nowhere in Brazil above this cave? And then I start examining it, and I look, and it's hand carved. The whole cave is hand carved. The cross is hand carved. And my mind is just reeling at this point.
How big? What? So it's above the entrance of the cave?
Yeah, it's above the entrance.
Wow.
Of the cave. And so my mind is just going crazy. And so I'm trying to interview this guy, and the best I could get out of him was that the old women, the indigenous women that lived in the area, would go into the cave and use it for prayer, meditation, and to do magic. That's what he told me. But he didn't know of any Templar presence. He didn't know. He knew that there were Templar descendants, however, in the area. And the townspeople in Alto Paraiso and Moinho and San Jorge, interesting names, by the way, if you think about that, are all 3 towns that surround this cave. They are all aware of Templars, the Templar descendants that live in the area. Also, there's a man that he's a Mason that lives he actually lives in Brasilia, but he built his rendition of Camelot just outside of Alto Paraiso, between Alto Paraiso and my cave, who I interviewed, and he is also a Templar descendant. So it's well known that the Templars were in this area, but nobody knew that this cave was a Templar cave.
Now, what style of cross was it, and how big was it?
The cross is about 10 inches in height, probably 6 inches across, maybe 7 or it's about like this. Above the cave. And I took the photos of the cross into Portugal in 2018 to a cross expert, a Templar cross expert, who said that it was definitely an early Templar cross. And
has Timothy Hogan seen him?
Pardon?
Has Timothy Hogan seen your images?
I don't know. We talked a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to connect at the Disclosure Fest, because we're both speaking at the Disclosure Fest too. So I'm really looking forward to that, because we're going to compare notes on some things, because he's touched on some subjects that, pushing back the dates of the creation of the Templars and whatnot, that I have firmly believed. And so we're going to talk. We're going to connect.
Yeah, the whole crew is going to be at Stairway to the Stars. Yeah, the whole crew is going to be there.
Yeah.
You're going to be there. Tim Hogan's going to be there. Scott Walter's going to be there. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. Yeah. And
so
everybody,
I'm looking forward to discussions while I'm. Pardon?
Yeah, no, I was telling everybody the links for Stairway to the Stars are below. If you want to get your tickets and come hang out with us, it's November 10th, 11th, and 12th in Las Vegas at the Luxor Hotel. Tim blows my mind. I mean, he's first off, he's just smart. but the way that he speaks and presents all of this, and Scott Walter, of course, too, as well. He's one of my favorites on the subject. And to get the three of you together, oh man, I can't wait. I'm gonna dinner's on me. Okay, so we'll all sit and talk through this.
I'm really, Jimmy, I'm really looking forward to, to the getting together, all of us, and being able to have some conversations about these subjects, about the Templars, and our mutual research. I was supposed to be going back to Portugal in October. I was hoping to do it before the Disclosure Fest, but it's had to be postponed to January, February. But I've got some really amazing research over there that I'm going to be pulling out of there that I'm so excited about, which I am going to talk to them about off the record, and share that information with them off the record, because I think that, it takes all of us to get down to the truth of this history. Not any one person can possibly get to the root of this historical record of the Templars, because there was so much hidden. There was so much that was intentionally hidden, that I think that it's going to take a whole tribe, basically, to really discover and put the pieces together, and to be able to disclose what actually took place, what the Templars were actually doing, what their agenda actually was. I have an idea that the Templars were, I hate to use the word colonizing because it's got such a bad stigma today, but I believe that they were in India, that they were all over the globe during, from any between 1099 and the 1300s. I think that they were all over. The Portuguese were the shipbuilders. They were the shipbuilders. They had the fleets. The Templars had the money. They had the fleets. They had the opportunity, and they had this. Now that I found out, they have a naval base in Peniche, Portugal. So it just stands to reason. I just really firmly believe that they were all over the globe, and I think that they may have even been. If you buy into the descendants of Mary, Jesus Christ, and Mary Magdalene, which, if that's the case, there's probably millions of descendants at this point. And if you buy into that story, it's very possible that they may even have been, implanting these people, in all over the nation to save them, to keep them safe. If that's the truth, if that's one of the things that they were protecting, it would make sense that they were doing that they were literally colonizing different areas all over the globe, to keep this bloodline safe.
Now, so you enter the cave. You pull the bushes back. You see the cross. Man, I would have done anything to have seen that for the first time too, as well. You enter the cave. How big is this cave?
Well, the cave goes back about 10 to 12 feet, and it curves back. And I found out on my second trip there that it's a gold mine. So it's carved. The whole thing is hand carved, and it goes back like 10 feet, probably 10, maybe 12 feet at the most. I haven't measured it, but it's wide enough to stand in. It's above my head, probably a good 5 or 6 inches above my head. I can stand in it all the way back into the back, where then you have to start crouching when you get way back into the very end of it, where the bats live. But anyway, it's a pretty good sized cave, and I have just found the location of 2 of the other caves in Cavalcanche, which is not far from Alto Paraiso, and from the first cave that I discovered, that I'm going to be going into next year to see and explore. They happen to be on Kalunga property, and and I have a relationship now with the Kalunga people because I interviewed them. They were living in these caves in the 1500s, which is very interesting. So that dates them at least back before the Portuguese and Spanish arrived in Brazil. They hid out in these caves to escape the the slave. They were slaves. They were brought there to be slaves on the plantations in Brazil, and they escaped. And so the Kalunga, they're African. They're Africans from Africa, and they settled into the Alto Paraiso surrounding that whole area. Anyway, so Cabo Conche, this the specific area where these caves are, is Kalunga property. So it's going to take a little bit of negotiation on my part to get in and get permission to go into these caves and see them. But I fully intend to do it. So, I had a really good rapport with them when I went last time. I was actually invited all the way out into their village and was able to interview their elders, which was, was astounding. It was really a wonderful experience. So I got to hear their whole story, and the fact that they lived in these caves, which for me was great news because it established the fact that the caves were there. They had already been there when they arrived.
Now, and let's start to talk about what you saw on the walls there. So we have the cross at the entrance. Symbols, was there any languages or dates?
No languages, no dates, but there were crosses, and these same crosses are seen on the walls in Dome, France, in the dungeon. They're also seen in Peniche, and they're also seen in Istanbul. They're crosses with what looks like a shield at the bottom. It's a triangle at the bottom. There's several of those, and then there's a really interesting symbol that the research that I haven't found this symbol anywhere else. People are telling me that it may be what they call a Lemurian cross. I'm still doing some research on that because then it's kind of come to a standstill on that, a brick wall on that, because I was hoping to find it somewhere else in a Templar cave, in Europe somewhere, and it's just not been found. I haven't seen it anywhere else. So I don't know what that symbolizes, but it's the same tool markings as the crosses that are definitely Templar crosses.
And how many are there?
There's probably 5 in there, and I have photographs of all of them.
It's absolutely incredible. And the documentary, and we'll take a break here in a second, but you can head over to the Knights in Brazil. The links are below, and you can watch the trailer and get access to the documentary too as well. Now, okay, so if we spider web our way back, or either from the Americas back to Europe, or the other direction from Europe back out, we have Scotland, right? We have Britain itself. We have Spain. We have Portugal, and other points of origin where the Knights Templar may have not only hidden their treasure but used those as ports heading in this direction into North, Central, and South America, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I also believe that they had developed a relationship with the Amazon tribes too that come into Alto Paraiso. I actually went into the Amazon jungle last time, which turned out to be what I call sort of a mini finale of my Grail quest, because I went in to interview the chief about the possibility of his tribe being one of them that brought the Templars in, and they weren't. He wasn't. His tribe wasn't one of the tribes, but he promised to connect with some of his other tribal chiefs in the area, and he's putting the word out. So, but what did happen is I was able to participate in a healing ceremony there, and as I told you, I had a liver transplant, and so after that ceremony, during that ceremony, I was able to, I don't know, this sounds odd, but I was able to make this liver my own. And I am no longer taking anti-rejection meds, and I haven't taken them over 2 years. So this is huge. This is medically a miracle, basically. Um, so I think that the Amazon tribes did have a relationship with the Templars. I think that their spiritual connections would have been very similar. Their spiritual beliefs would have been very similar. Um, and so I think that there was assistance by the Amazon tribes to to help the Templars get in from the coast into central Brazil, and like I said, also into Peru. Um, so what I'm going to be looking for when I go back is not only these caves, because I usually go for a month when I go. I'm also going to be looking and going back in to talk to my friend Assis, who's the chief of the Huni Queen people, and find out if he's heard anything more. And if there is any trinkets, any chainmail, anything else, any kind of physical evidence of a relationship of trade or whatever with the Templars.
Now, it sounds like, before we hit the break here, it sounds like the tribes in Brazil didn't feel threatened, that the Templars weren't there to conquer, right, and to take their land and to do the things that you said it yourself, the colonizers, right? that came later. It was okay. It was a friendly relationship between the Templars and the tribes in the region.
Yeah, I believe it was. I believe it was. And I also think that they may have married into the indigenous culture that was already there, because, at that point, they were no longer they were no longer a Templar organization. So they were freed from their vows. And I think that they may have, well, they obviously started families there because there's descendants in the area. So I think that they were on friendly terms, very similar to what I believe in North America, that they're on friendly terms with the Native American tribes, the indigenous
Right.
culture in North America as well. Um, and, for the same reason that I believe that they also, uh, had some type of reasonable relationship with the inner workings of of Islam and Sufis while they were in the Holy Land. I think that they were interested in other cultures, and I think that when you meet someone, you read them in a lot of ways, and even if you can't communicate verbally. And I think that just their very presence was accepted by not only the Native Americans, indigenous culture in North America, but also in South America, because of that, because of their stature, and because of their truth, and because of who they were. I think that emanated, and I think that was, that was something that they shared with the indigenous cultures, and I think that they had relationships with these people.
Yeah, and and we're going to take a break here in just a second.
Okay.
If you think about how treacherous, how dangerous it was to go from France to Israel, right? That's a journey, right? I mean, that is, think about that. And anybody that would do it as a guide, right, as a protector of those pilgrims that were heading over, if you think about that, going the other direction over the Atlantic to the New World was nothing.
Right. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
It's just,
I totally agree. It just makes sense. I mean, sometimes you just have to think about what makes sense. And, they could see the writing on the wall in Europe. They could see the Inquisition coming in. They were looking for other places to be. They were looking for other places to reorganize. And I don't doubt at all that they were traveling the globe. I do know that, that they also were deeper into Africa. much further into Africa. They were into Ethiopia. The Templars in Portugal had relationship with the Ethiopian king, who traveled back and forth from Ethiopia into Portugal and vice versa. The Templars went into Ethiopia to meet with him. What were they doing there? What was that relationship about? That's the same area where the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be, right? So
Right.
they're so intriguing to me. They just, they're so mysterious and so intriguing to me. It's like I have committed myself, my life, the rest of my life, to uncovering some of these mysteries because they're just fascinating to me.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Kathleen Ball. We are talking about the Templars in Brazil and the history of the Knights Templar as well. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We will be right back.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. We'll be right back.
Join us November 10th, 11th, and 12th, 2023, live at the Luxor Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip, as Disclosure Fest Foundation and Fade to Black Radio presents Stairway to the Stars, a Human Origins Science and Technology Expo, with live talks, lectures, and workshops by world-acclaimed researchers and authors featuring topics like human origins, ancient technologies, indigenous teachings, workshops, a mass meditation, yoga and sound healing, music, and so much more. This is Jimmy Church, by the way, and I'll be your host all weekend long. Don't miss our intimate sky watch and meteor shower over the infamous Area 51 airspace in Rachel, Nevada, with special surprise celebrity hosts guiding us through the night. This event will sell out. For more information and tickets, please visit disclosurefest.org. Hi, everybody. Jimmy Church here. Very special announcement, and that is we are shipping Fade to Black t-shirts again. It's been almost 2 years. We did a full upgrade to the website, so you can head over to jimmychurchradio.com. It's all simple to do, and it's right there. Remember, we broadcast 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. We bring you the best, the brightest, the most knowledgeable and amazing guests, the best conversations. We do that 4 nights a week. We also do 4 days a week. We broadcast the news, and we do that live too as well. It's not a one-man show. I do it with website support. I do it with producers. I do it with writers and artists. All contribute to the show. The best way to help support what we do here is with the Fade to Black t-shirt. And you can get your Fade to Black t-shirt one of 2 ways. First, go to jimmychurchradio.com, order a shirt. It's really that simple. You're going to get a tracking number, it's going to get shipped, and it's going to get autographed. The second way to get a shirt is with a Game Changer membership. Now, the Game Changer membership not only includes a free t-shirt, but you get a private email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads. You have full access to the website, and everything includes free shipping, and everything is autographed. So help support the show. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. The links are below. You can just go to jimmychurchradio.com, and it's right on the website. So there you go. I'm Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I'm so excited that I just have one thing to say. Go Beckley Teppy. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Kathleen Ball. And we're talking about the Templars in Brazil and the history of the Knights Templar, and doing a pretty good deep dive tonight. I'm really loving the conversation. She's going to be at Stairway to the Stars in November in Las Vegas at the Luxor Hotel. The links are below to get your tickets. and get your hotel rooms and get your travel all set up. It's going to be an amazing weekend. We are doing so much out there at the Luxor Hotel. And now I want to get right back into the conversation, Kathleen, and I want to start here. The suppression of the history of the Knights Templar is something that is very tangible, and I don't understand why historians and governments around the world don't want this discussed. And it's happening over and over and over again. Why keep this knowledge from us? Why fight it so hard?
I think it's the same reason why, they try to keep our ancient history under wraps too. I mean, there's been a tremendous amount of energy on the part of, I don't know who these people are, but people on this planet who have a vested interest in keeping us ignorant. They want to keep the masses ignorant. And I just have my hats off to people like Graham Hancock and it's all the people, Andrew Collins, all the people who have dedicated their lives to uncovering these truths and bringing them to the forefront. And everybody, Timothy Hogan and Freddie Silva and Scott Wolter, all these people who are dedicated to bringing the Templar history to the world. Because the world has a right. People have a right to know what our collective history has been, and it's been too many years that we've allowed our collective history to be kept from us, and I think the time is now that things are meant to be uncovered, and we're discovering so many ancient sites. Back 30 years ago when I first got involved in this stuff, 35 years ago, I was studying Native American petroglyph sites all over North America. There was maybe one major discovery a year, maybe. Now we're hearing about discoveries almost on a monthly basis, and sometimes multiple discoveries on a monthly basis. So it's as if, the earth is giving up its secrets. And people, like myself and other explorers and researchers are wanting and they're committed to bringing the truth to the masses, to the public. And I'm really happy about that.
I was at a petroglyph site that it's a site that's really not discussed. There's a big mystery behind it. It's in the Mojave Desert out here. It's on the border of Arizona and Nevada. And so anyway, so I go out to the site. I'm with about 30 people, and we went out there to sky watch at this location. And so we were doing that, and then somebody said, well, yeah, but there's petroglyphs back here. So we go back and we're checking. It's the biggest single petroglyph site in North America. Okay, not Chaco Canyon, not these other. There's hundreds of petroglyphs on these canyon walls. So we go up and we get into a cave up on this hill, and this is what I see. As we get into that, I've got claustrophobia, man. I can't even believe I did this, but I'm around a bunch of people and I get cocky, and I would have never done this if I was alone. But anyway, so I go into this cave. It's at night. It's about 10 o'clock at night, shining our flashlights. We're shooting video, which I can show you, and I can show you the images. And they were fascinating, but there was one that I'm completely perplexed about. So this cave goes up about 30 feet. It's very narrow. Mm-hmm. And up at the top, probably 20 feet, 30 feet up, is this carving on the wall. Mm-hmm. We're shining the flashlights on it, and I look, and this is what it is. It is water on the bottom. Okay, you can see that with a line. And then above that is a stick figure, a guy, and he's standing there on the water with his arms outreached like this.
Uh-huh.
And in one hand over here is a cross. He's holding a cross and it's up in the air. The other hand is a circle. Now, what the hell? Right? Now, you know, and I'm looking at it, what are they trying to say? And the other part for me is how did they do it? Because that guy crab walked right up between the crevice and got up there and spent a lot of time. It's big, it's like this big. And again,
Yeah.
it's the water and him with his arms outreach. What is the story behind it? So I get back to LA, and Olivia, a good friend of mine who was the antagonist in this whole thing. Let's go into the cave. Oh man, So anyway, her and I are doing a lot of research into this site. Turns out it's 2,500 years old. Oh. And the Mojave Indians that settled in the area came in about 2,000 years ago. They say those petroglyphs are not theirs. Okay, so and when you look into the site, and there's been some research, it's a protected site now, but when you look at the research from archaeologists over the years, nobody's got any answers. It's some kind of origin story. That's their the running theory behind this, and I can see that. You can feel they're telling. There's a story there, right? We just don't know what. But anyway, this symbol with the water and this guy standing on it with his arms outreached with his cross and this circle in the other hand. It could be the sun, could be a planet, could be the moon. I don't know. But it's just that it's there. And what does it mean? And it's 2,500 years old.
Yeah. See, there's so much that's unexplained. There's so much that we're finding. And this is a great example, Jimmy, right here. You're talking about, you just sort of stumbled into this discovery, the same way I just stumbled into discovering the cave in Brazil. And Andrew Collins, they just stumbled into this area where they found this huge megalithic rock that resembles some of the things in Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. And it was on this farmer's property, but these things, like I said, these things are being discovered, I would suspect, maybe even on a daily, weekly basis. Think of the things that aren't even making it into the public eye, like what you discovered, what I discovered, and Andrew Collins discovered, and, several other researchers. We're in the public eye, so obviously we're going to share these things. But think of the things that, that haven't been brought forward to our attention. There's so much. What about that high school kid that, what was he doing? He was doing some type of LIDAR or something in Central America, and discovered that there were like 65 more temple systems over there in Central America. That was a couple years ago. This is a kid. This is a high school kid. So my point is that there are a lot of people right now, and within these last probably 20 years, who are dedicated to discovering these things and bringing them to the public. And I don't think that the momentum can be stopped at this point, no matter how hard, whatever these forces that be try to shut this stuff down. It's too late.
Yeah, I am pulling up. Okay, here it is here. Let me pause this. See if I can. Oh man, I don't have it. I have it in this video, and you can see. Let me back this up just a little bit here. Okay, pause. This is shining up to the top of the cave. Oh man, It's not going to.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
flashlight is lighting up the dude,
Right.
and I just wish that. You just really can't see it. Nah, you
Yeah. It's,
can't.
it's not real clear.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Well,
you know, it's just.
it's the Disclosure Fest. Bring it with you.
Yeah. Oh, it's absolutely incredible. I'll show you something else that we saw there.
Okay.
There were these. I think, I don't know, but I think this is DNA. This is a pet. It's a. Let me see here. Yeah, it just doesn't. So you can see the double helix. And
Yeah.
here
I
on.
see it. Up at the
Yeah.
top. Yeah. It was up at the top. Yeah. It
It,
does. It looks very similar to some glyphs and symbols I saw in India. That
what is in nature that has a double helix like that? Now, this is probably 4 feet tall,
Wow.
and it's a double helix. And
Wow.
then there was this dude. Check this out. See if we can see this. Now, you know what? It's just not showing up.
Well, it's difficult to make.
There it
Oh, there
is.
we go.
There it is.
There we
There,
go.
there.
Yeah. That, wow, this is really interesting because I saw something very similar in France, in a grotto in France. And I had a really interesting experience before I saw that figure. And there's the DNA. Yeah. That looks like DNA to me.
Yeah, and it's like what are they telling us? That guy that you see, it looks like he's got like a. I know it sounds that I'm going to sound like I'm some crazy, but it looks like he's got a helmet with a uh, uh, uh,
A face shield.
visor,
Yeah.
a shield,
Yeah.
antenna, and it's just like, and that's right next to this DNA strand, and then behind it, that's at the entrance to the cave, and then you go into the cave, and there's all kinds of things on the walls in there. But it was that one with the water and the dude standing on the water with his arms outstretched. That just, I mean, I stood there and stared at that and just, okay, all right.
They're definitely not typical indigenous glyphs from indigenous tribal cultures. They're definitely, I mean, I've seen a lot. I've been all over this country studying Native American indigenous culture in petroglyphs and pictographs, and I've never seen anything like that. I've seen similar figures to that, but not exactly the same. And the only other one that I can think of that was really close to that was in France, in a grotto in France. That was really interesting because I had this vision of this figure, but it was animated. It was, moving in my vision. And I came around a corner and there it was. It was on the wall. It was static. Obviously, it wasn't moving, but and I was just like, I was a little taken back. But this kind of stuff has happened ever since I had that near-death experience. This kind of stuff has happened to me more often than not. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, so when it comes to petroglyphs, and that includes Egypt, right, and that includes around the world, that if somebody back then, and that includes the Lascaux caves and the different cave paintings that go back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years, right? That's a long time. Where to take the time to preserve something, right? They've seen it, and now they want to take a picture of it and put it out. And the amount of time that goes into that, when the ideas that we have of ancient cultures is that life was about survival. That's what you did all day long. You survived, right? That's what you did. Your focus is on survival. It wasn't carving stuff on cave walls for months on end.
Right.
No, you had to survive. You had
Yeah.
to live through the night. Yeah.
There had to have been an inner circle again, a mystical circle, esoteric circle within these, these communities that maybe were protected or whatever. But they, had the time to do these things, and I believe that, that they were both male and female. They're priests. Well, we would call them priests or whatever, priestesses today, but they were maybe holy leaders of some sort within these cultures. I mean, because obviously these glyphs exist, they exist, and they obviously were probably not carved out by the common people who were out, fighting the bears and the mastodons and whatever was on the
Right.
planet at the time, obviously. So, but somebody was doing them. Somebody was doing these, and somebody was, and they had to have been supported to be able to do these. So, again, I mean, we're just uncovering so many things that just don't go along with the historical record that we've been told, and we're seeing a much different picture than what we've been told. Much, much different.
So today, to stay on this for a second, I understand when I see a depiction of a horse
Uh-huh.
or of a bison, right? A rat. I understand they are seeing that,
Yeah.
and that's there. That's nature. They see that it's part of their world and it's being depicted. Okay, all right, I get that. I understand it. But where do you see a double helix
You don't.
in nature? You
don't.
You just simply don't.
don't. And personally, my personal belief, one of the things that I focused on with my doctorate was, I believe that we carry that our DNA is like a covenant between us, the physical realm, our physical bodies, and our creator or other dimensional realities. That we literally carry the memory from the very beginning of physical manifestation within our DNA, and we can access. It's like a way home, if you want to call it that. And so, whoever was doing that DNA in that cave may have been teaching with using these symbols to teach. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. But it's just a very odd thing to see in the midst of other obviously indigenous glyphs. Right smack in the middle of these things, you see these two figures. This man obviously appearing to be walking on water with a cross in his hand. That is not typical. That is
No, it's not. It is. I'm telling you, I was perplexed when I say that I stood there and went, "Huh."
Yeah.
I said that out loud. I put my hands on my hips. I was like,
yeah. Well, that's how I felt when I found the cave. When I saw this cave in the middle of Brazil, it's like, holy moly.
Yeah, right.
Almost my knees, and I just went, what is that doing in the middle of Brazil?
We, and these discoveries are happening daily. The announcements, you may not have heard this yet. I covered this morning. That check this out. How much we really don't know about us. Archaeologists in Zambia just discovered a wooden structure dating back 476,000 years. Now, and what they found, this is the crazy part. Now you think wooden structure. So what is this? Like a teepee, or a couple of sticks leaning on each other? No, they found a 90-degree corner of a house, and the logs were notched and intercut and laid into each other. And it happened to survive 476,000 years for us to discover it.
Right. And they can carbon date. They can carbon date that.
That's all been done. But this predates us
Yeah.
right? Homo sapien sapien by 200,000 years.
Yeah.
And
See, we're getting into something that is dear to my heart, very dear to my heart. That I think that a lot of the esoteric belief systems throughout our ages have carried this information forward. But I believe that we've been around for possibly millions of years, that life on this planet is much, much, much more ancient than what we believe. I believe in the Lemurian period. I believe in the Atlantic period. And I believe that Lemurian period preceded Atlantis. And I also believe that some of the cave paintings you were talking about, like horses and animals, yes, this is what they were seeing. But also, all those many years ago, 60,000 years ago, consciousness was different at that point. We go through periods of consciousness that shifts and changes, the yugas. I'm sure you're probably familiar with the yugas, in the East Indian belief systems. We go through periods, and we're supposedly coming out now of the Kali Yuga into the Dwapara Yuga at this point in time. But in previous periods, I believe that our consciousness, we were much less mentally driven as just human beings. We experienced life and our world on a more united belief, a way of believing, a way of sensing. The Egyptians call this the 360 degrees of senses. They actually consider these to be senses, and that we actually knew the structure of stars. We knew the structure, and we were intimately related with all of our surroundings, the plants. We understood them on a much deeper level than what we think of them as today. And this, I believe, was all. It's all within our DNA. The memories are within our DNA, and I think that will be the last frontier. Is actually exploring these memories in our DNA, and I think that there are also these memories oftentimes are triggered. I know I have these, mystical experiences, whatever you want to, visions, I don't know, whatever you want to call them. But I've had them in Scotland, I've had them in Africa, I've had them in Egypt, I've had them in Portugal, I've had them in Brazil, I've had them all over different countries. Flashes of memory of scenes from ancient times that just flash into my mind from ancient times. And I believe that this is something it's triggering memory. When I go to these sites, there's still some type of energy there that is triggering these memories in my own DNA. Because you have to, I have to understand our DNA and our collective is a collective memory. It's not just my personal memory, it's a collective memory. What goes into my body has been recycled over and over and over and over and over again. My body is not new. Your body's not new. Nothing on this planet is new. It's all recycled over and over and over and over again. So, Candace Pert, back in the late 80s, she wrote this wonderful book. It was called Molecules of Emotion. She was the first person, the forerunner to bring this concept to, the masses, to our minds, that molecules hold emotion and memory, that cells actually hold memories. And I believe that it's the DNA in our cells that hold these memories. So,
yeah, and when the conversations that have happened over and over again about the possibility of a high-tech civilization that predates us now.
Absolutely.
And it's cross cultures. It's every continent has got their own story about this, but we're in a big series of denial about this. And then when something like this gets revealed today, that 476,000 years ago, we were building houses. Remember, the dogma is that the early versions of us, just 10,000 years ago, we were nomadic. We were just nomadic tribes wandering the earth searching for food. Right. That's what we were. Well, as it turns out, that we were building houses 476,000 years ago, and to when you go to a museum and in some natural history museum and they have some diorama of ancient man, what do you got? You got a husband and wife and dudes holding a club, wearing bear skin, right? And that's who we were. Well, clearly that wasn't the case.
It was not the case.
No. I'm fascinated with this.
I absolutely don't swallow that. That I never did. This was what's interesting. When I was doing, my bachelor's, my first bachelor's, I took I was on the fence of whether I was going to go into archaeology or art. I just didn't know. And in archaeology, they teach you, of course, all the historical record and all that, and anthropology and all that. They teach you, this is what happened, and this is when I never bought it. I just didn't buy it. And, they came over the land bridge to come into North America at such and such a date. Well, I remember at the time I had found a Jamon on a piece of Jamon pottery. I found a bow and arrow. And I'm like, well, what is this doing on here on this piece of Jamon pottery? If they didn't cross the land bridge, this is just flies in the face of everything that you're telling me. I also didn't buy, the development of mankind. Like this happened, they were this type of species, and then this species and this species before becoming Homo sapiens sapien, and it all happened separately. That was all baloney, and we're finding out now that it was baloney. Look at the Denisovan discovery.
Right, that's like the best example. So many things just weren't supposed to exist.
Exactly.
Gobekli Tepe.
When I was in Caracas, Peru, I went down to meet with Brian Forster and his girlfriend Irene down there, and study the Paracas. I wanted to see him firsthand. I wanted to see him myself and study him and photograph him. And if you look at those skulls, they are not headbound. They were not created by head binding. And then they found the one that was in vitro, which is obviously not. You can't go into a woman's uterus and bind an infant skull. It's just impossible. You can't do that. So it's telling us that there's another species. And by the way, unfortunately, that the whole museum in Paracas has now been shut down. And the powers that be have shut that down. I don't know what happened to the skulls, but I do know that there is still other research going on in other countries that I'm not going to mention because I don't want that to be affected the same way. But these skulls are now, these photographs that I have are precious to me because you can't get them anymore.
The other part about this, I wanted to talk about the Holy Grail. We'll see if we can swing back around to that before the end of the show. But Jaime Maussan did this presentation, this UFO hearing in front of the Mexican Congress 2 weeks ago. And he carts out on the stage, right, 2 Peruvian mummies. That right, and if everybody went, crazy. And this was originally brought forward by Gaia TV back in late 2017 and 2018. Mm-hmm. And 2 sets of mummies. A couple were from Nazca, and then the others were from Cusco. All right. So anyway, Jaime brings out the 2 Cusco mummies. They're 60s. They're not very big. They're about this big. Anyway, there is an industry down there that recreates these mummies. They're fake ones, right? Little, different sizes okay. All right. So there's that. How they put them together, it's none of my business, and I don't really care, honestly. But these 2 mummies I've been looking at the X-rays and the analysis about this for a very long time, and almost 6 years now. So yesterday, or 2 days ago, what's today? Today's Wednesday. On Monday, they re-examined in Mexico the two mummies. They did CT scans, they did X-rays, and this was by the Department of the Navy. And they did a press release yesterday stating the mummies are whole. They were not put together. These are intact. They are what they seem to be, that these are not pieced together, that these are somewhere between 1,000 and 1,700 years old.
Wow.
They're not assembled and they are not fake.
Wow.
And now what do we do? What do we do with this? Now, I'm not saying it's aliens, right? I'm not going to be a Giorgio Tsoukalos meme, right? And say that. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it's aliens. I'm not saying that yet. There's a lot of research that needs to go into this. But the debunking side of this seems to be closed, that these are intact, whatever they are. And I don't know yet what they are, but that's a part of our history. And now Peru, which didn't care about this before, right now they're upset, and they want a criminal investigation on how these historical pre-Peruvian, they're calling them, artifacts got out of the country.
Right.
Well, if they're fake, then who cares? But now all of a sudden everybody cares. It's a pretty interesting situation we've got ourselves in.
Yeah, I find it very interesting. And again, we have this attempt to basically censorship, and if they're okay with it as long as they're fake, they don't pay any attention to it. But suddenly, once they are, they're proven not to be fakes, now they want to shut it down. Now they want to create this whole investigation. And I think that's what happened. Brian Forrester had he was participated, and I don't know what level, but he participated in or inspired the DNA testing on these Paracas skulls and mummies over there. And once that information came to light, then suddenly now we have, the museum's been closed down. We don't know what happened to the skulls, and it's just it's censorship. It's censorship, and it's still going on in places where they think they can still get away with it.
Yeah, and if we look at the string of coincidences in that area, Bolivia, Peru, where we have the Nazca lines. We have you think there are a lot of pyramids in Egypt? Go check out Nazca. Nazca's covered with pyramids. They don't have the infrastructure or the resources to go and get into the archaeology that they need to apply to all of this. It's just sitting there. You have Pumapunku, right? Tiahuanacu. You have Titicaca. You have the walls in and around Caracas that are just fascinating to me. You have the elongated skulls. Now we have these mummies that are surfacing there. There is something very special about that area. And I think we're about to have a pretty big reveal happen.
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're just about the doors are about ready to blow off, about what is actually there and what has been discovered over there. And the same thing's happening in Turkey, by the way. Turkey there's just discoveries on a daily basis over there that are absolutely phenomenal, that are helping to push back our dates. We have Göbekli Tepe, and I was lucky to be in Karahan Tepe before they excavated Karahan Tepe, and I was over there with Andrew Collins and Hugh Newman and a group of researchers over there. Anyway, and I said at the time, this is going to be bigger than Göbekli Tepe, the Karahan Tepe. I could feel it. I knew it just from the artifacts and things that we were just picking up uncovering projectile points, and I found a bead that was made out of bone that looked to be Neolithic. I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't wait to get back over to Turkey and go back to Karahan Tepe and see what they have discovered there, because I knew it was going to be a big deal. I knew it was going to be, older than Göbekli Tepe. I knew it. I could just feel it, But this is so exciting.
Does anybody say Göbekli Tepe better than Andrew Collins? The way it rolls off his tongue, he's got a way, that accent. I just love that guy to death.
Yeah,
I'm very excited, and I thought you were going to mention this earlier. We're going to get to the Holy Grail. Everybody, just relax. Is that there wasn't supposed to be anything left to discover in Giza. And as it turns out, there's a lot that is being discovered in Giza, and currently with the Great Pyramid and these new chambers, and they weren't supposed to exist. But that also includes the tunnels and caves underneath the Great Pyramid.
Absolutely.
And it was Andrew Collins that discovered that, and we were so close to not making that discovery, because he went back 2 years in a row and he gave up. And he was walking out of the bird tomb, and he happens to see something, off to his left. He walks in and he finds the little hole, and then they find that ginormous cave system directly underneath the Great Pyramid. It's things like that weren't supposed to exist, and they are surfacing, like you said, nearly on a daily basis.
They are. People are paying attention, and they're really, when I go to places, I'm looking from, the eyes of a researcher, of a historian. I'm looking at anything that's an anomaly, anything that looks like it's out of place for the environment, for where it is. I'm looking, and I'm always comparing too. I'm always doing a comparative study in my brain of what I see one place compared to where what I see somewhere else. So that's going on simultaneously whenever I travel. And this is also happening with all these other researchers. It's a phenomenal time to be alive, I think. I mean, I'm really very grateful that I'm alive at this particular time in history, because we are uncovering so many things. And I could just imagine what it's going to be like in 20 years, and I can just imagine what our reality is going to be, what the collective reality, what's going to be taught in the schools.
Right.
What the history classes are going to be like in 20 years. I think they're going to be phenomenal.
Who is going to be on the right side of history in 20 years? And if I've got my money, I'm going with, Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson and Andrew Collins and yourself and Scott Walter and Timothy Hogan, where I think that history, their way of looking at it, differently. Randall Carlson is no joke. And it's the way that he's looking at the evidence, and Graham's looking at the evidence. Robert Bivall is looking at the evidence, and Robert Schock and the late John Anthony West and Andrew Collins, Hugh Newman is just phenomenal. And that's how you have to get to these answers. And I think that they are going to be on the right side of history when this all plays out.
Absolutely. And another one I want to mention too is, as Gretchen Cornwall, she's bringing forward a phenomenal research about the Templars as well. And she's actually a friend of mine. So we share a lot of our research. But I mean, they're just, and JJ, Ainsworth is another one that, with Hugh and Andrew Collins, she works with them, and she's doing some of her own research, and she's making these amazing discoveries. So there's just a tremendous amount of people now that are willing to step out of the box, that aren't just buying the historical record hook, line, and sinker that we've been taught for millennia, however long that's been crammed down our throats. And we're questioning those, and we're also going out and proving that historical record is no longer valid. It's no longer valid. There's too many holes in that canoe. It's just, it can't float. It just can't float anymore. You know what I mean? People, just the common everyday people aren't buying it anymore because there's so many of us now that are telling them otherwise.
Now, somebody just said they're drinking out of my grail. Right, I'm drinking out of my grail right now.
Oh, are you?
The idea. Okay, so Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code, fabulous fiction. Man, it sucked me in. But what it allowed, and I think that we have forgotten because we have amnesia. We truly have forgotten how big the Da Vinci Code actually was.
Oh,
I mean, it took over the world.
It was phenomenal. It was
huge,
phenomenal.
And
what it did, it put the Templars in everybody's living room.
100%. And René Le Chateau and these ideas. But the Jesus and Mary, now this is just me talking, okay? I'm here to offend everybody. I won't leave anybody out. I think that the bloodline of Christ being the Holy Grail, that's fiction. It's a great story, but I don't believe that is the case. I think that the Grail itself, from the Last Supper and however you want to frame it, I think that is a real historical object. And it's out there somewhere, just like the Ark and the true cross and these other biblical artifacts, the Ten Commandments, right? I think that these objects are out there, and if those that are in possession of any of these objects, think about what that would do to the world. Mm-hmm. Right. And that would upset a lot of religions and ruin a lot of things too, as well. So do you hold that same idea that the Grail is an actual physical object?
I'm on the fence about that. I personally believe that a Grail quest, like we talked about before, I mentioned before, that a Grail quest is a very personal thing. It's a quest. It's an internal quest, in addition to being an exploratory quest that people can go on, and it basically challenges you as a human being. And I talked about it. It literally hones who you are, and helps you to become who you are. The Grail cup, I'm just on the fence about. We have, I'm trying to think of that fellow's name in England, Graham. Anyway, he believes that he may have discovered the Grail cup in England. I personally don't think that it has been discovered. If there is such an object, I don't think that it has been discovered. And think about it also, if this is what you want to believe, if this is the body of information you want to believe, if that Grail cup is real, and we have the capability of DNA testing now, it would be very interesting to be able to pull DNA off of that, don't you think?
Well, yeah, there's probably a lot of DNA on there. There's some Sinclair DNA by now, well, and other, but here's the thing with this idea. Mm-hmm. I think that where there's smoke, there's fire. Uh-huh. Dan Brown, the Holy Grail, the quest for the Grail, and this has been written about for over 1,000 years. If we go back to the different romantic stories behind all of this, but it goes back even further into antiquity than that. We have this modern version of it, and then Dan Brown, who look, all the credit in the world. He turned it into a pretty cool story. But what he did do is he elevated all of this into everybody's minds. Absolutely. To go and consider this. And that's the part that I'm very thankful that Dan Brown did that.
Right. And I also want to give credit to, Clive Prince and Lynn Picknett, because Dan Brown based his research, his story on a lot of their research that they had done, grueling research. It was, and very in-depth research that they did. So, so this research had already been taking place. He just basically brought it to the forefront, put it in everybody's face, and to the point where I was in Italy at the time when the Da Vinci Code film came out, and the Catholic Church was trying to sue Dan Brown and trying to stop that from being shown in movie theaters. I don't,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
do that,
And,
but I was present
I-
I was in Italy. I was in Italy, in Rome, when that film, when there were, that film came out, and there was a tremendous amount of backlash for that film, and that right there told me that there was something to it. Something
yeah,
to
Lynn.
otherwise there would not have been that kind of backlash, Jimmy.
Yeah. And there was a few books, and including Clive and Lynn and their work, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, right, and some other things, some other work that had predated Dan by a decade. And I'm so jealous of Clive, by the way, because I would marry Lynn Picknett in a second. Man, she is just so intelligent, so smart, so regal, so elegant.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate everything. When she was a guest on this show, right? I did my best not to be a fanboy. It was tough, but I just been a fan of her work from the very beginning, and Clive as well. So
Well, she assisted in the editing of my book when she was one of my primary editors in my book too. By the way,
she is just amazing, absolutely amazing. But so what do we do with that though? Right? Is that the part of when France constantly comes up, and there's a small little footnote in history that people don't talk about, and I understand why. All right, before Napoleon invaded Egypt and created Egyptology, by the way, before he did that, you know what he did first? He just invaded Italy.
Yeah.
And he took it all and took it to France. And so after he did, now people don't talk about this. What is it? He literally robbed Italy of their stuff and takes it to France. What did he take with him? Nobody talks about it. It's a very strange thing. So he gets back to France, and they're like, hey, good job in Italy. That was amazing. Now go sack England. And he didn't want to do it. And he said, well, what about if you want to, you want to mess with England? Why don't I go to Egypt? We'll invade Egypt and we'll cut off their trade route into Asia, because that's where they get all their tea from. I'm being kind of cavalier here, but that's why he ended up in Egypt. So it was his invasion and sacking of Italy, taking everything that he could back into France, but nobody talks about it, and there's no inventory.
Right. Yeah. Well, see, I didn't even know that fact. So that's something now that I'll have my radar out, see what I can find out about that. Yeah, there's so many things, like, we've talked about so many things in history that it's the stuff that's left out that we're now finding out about. And that is exciting to me. That is just very exciting to me. Like this research in Portugal that I've stumbled on. And I mean, this stuff has been kept secret by this family for hundreds of years. And they're willing now to share it with me. It's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. They risked their lives, their family, their ancestors risked their lives to keep this information for a
Well,
time.
I've told Scott. I'll tell you the same thing. I've told Scott and I've told Tim. Right? Okay. I don't want to hear anymore. It's coming. We're gonna do the reveal. No. The time is now. Let's just go. Let's just go. Life is short. I'm ready for this. I want to see the maps. I want to see the books. I want to see the treasure maps. I want to see the artifacts that you guys have got. I want to see the Ark of the Covenant. I want to see what's in these Templar caves in America, Templar Cave in Brazil. I want to see this stuff. Let's bring it out. We can handle it. We want to know the truth. So quit sitting on this. And you know what? We're ready. It's time.
Yeah. Well, you can see a lot of what I've talked about. It's on my personal website, on my personal Facebook page, Kathleen Ann Ball. It's also on my Templars and the Templars in Brazil Facebook site, Instagram, LinkedIn. I post a lot of these. I have all of the glyphs and symbols that I found in the cave are on my Facebook pages, and I don't hold that. Once I get the physical evidence like that, I post it. I put it out there for everybody to see. And other researchers to compare to whatever. Because I've had people call me and say, hey, I have this. That's how this researcher in Brazil connected with me. He said, I've seen the same symbols that you posted on Facebook in Peniche. Awesome. And next thing I know, this other information is coming to the forefront. As soon as I have that information in my hands, I guarantee you I will have it out for others to see. I'm not a believer in holding on to this stuff.
Yeah, neither is Scott or Tim. They just want it, and others too. It's not just them, but they want it to be complete, and they don't want any questions out there. But here's the thing with that, though.
Yeah,
we can. It's endless. It's endless. So there's something going, behind that and behind that and we could wait forever. So let's just, put it out there now. Let's get it out there and see where we are.
Well,
what's the name of your Facebook page? So my moderators can get it up.
Actually, I have 3 Facebook pages. I have Kathleen Ann Ball, and then I also have the Templars in Brazil. And then I have the Amazon Jungle Tours, which I was doing for a while, and I will be doing again, actually. Amazon Jungle Tours is just about the Amazon jungle period. But the other 2, I post a lot of my Templar research on both of those other Facebook pages. So you can look those up if you want.
Okay, so Bill and Genocide, get those Facebook links up in the chat. And we've also got, of course, the Templars in Brazil links below and over on our website. Kathleen, thank you so much. I'm so excited to hang out with you in November at the Luxor.
I think it's going to be great. All of us getting together, and I can't wait for the conversations that are going to come out of that. And comparing research and see what comes out of it. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, get ready. It's going to be a blockbuster, and I'll see you there. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Behave and be well.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, Jimmy. I thoroughly enjoyed this evening.
It's a perfect night for me and for everybody else. So be safe out there. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great night. Kathleen Ball. And Kathleen's website, the links are below. Very simple. And thank you, Bill, for getting those up. It's Templars in Brazil. That's Brazil with a Z.com. Thank you so much. Now, tomorrow night here on Fade to Black, Linda Moulton Howe is here with us. That is tomorrow. And then we're going to do a very special show on Friday night with Melissa Tittle about the Peruvian mummies and all of the latest disclosures around that. So that's Friday night, 5 shows this week here on Fade to Black. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin, webmasters Drew the Geek, music Doug Aldrich, intro Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night with Linda Moulton Howe, I want you to be safe. Go Backley Tappy.